going to be taking a look today, or actually not a look. I'm going to be doing today's final part in the high school memory series using a technique that I used. I started using it at the very end of my career at Jericho with uh, a research class. And it was always a dilemma. What do you do at the end of a semester or at the end of the year if you have a full year class when there's no regents exam or final exam to prepare for? It's just the last day or two of school. What do you do? You sit around, you talk, you have fun, and so forth. But at Townsend Harris, I was always concerned with, wait a second, what if Dr. Largman walked in? And what would I be doing? And how could I rationalize this as a learning experience? So I developed what I call the student choice roundtable. I would use roundtables to discuss current events and so forth in a fairly structured way. But this was going to be now student based, student centered. So students would come into class and they would see a slip of paper on their desk at Townsend Harris or on their tabletop at Jericho, because I used this extensively at Jericho, and they would be instructed to write a topic on the paper that they would like to discuss. And so the thinking was that this would be a way for me to get a sense of what kids are interested in, and we could have discussions in class based on the topics that the kids wanted to discuss rather than the topics that I wanted to discuss. And I instructed them that their topic doesn't have to do with the class that we have, whether it was research or sociology or economics, anything that they would like to talk about. I told them, think about if you were in the cafeteria and you just hanging out with your friends. What would you be talking about? That might be a topic that we could discuss in class. And I said that that their only limitation was good taste. Please, nothing nasty or foul or anything along those lines. So those are their instructions. Here's a photo of me doing a round table. So you could see the little slips of paper that are on the table. Those are the slips that the kids had filled out. And then you see me. I'm kind of having a good time, and obviously we were talking about seltzer because I was holding a seltzer bottle. So that must have been some question that a kid asked about seltzer. So, so let's jump in and let's do this round table. So the slips of paper would come to me. They would be folded, and I would open them up and always read them to myself first before I just blurted out what a kid had written. And I would get, topics that they are interested in discussing, things of importance to them, and so forth. So I would occasionally get a topic that would be like this: pressing issue, not to me, but this would spur tremendous discussion in the class, an argument, debates. What's better, M&Ms or Skittles? And they would go back and forth. This popped up over the years several times, and I can tell you, uh, the result of it was that most students, vast majority of students, prefer M&Ms to Skittles, as I do uh, as well. Uh, here's another one. I'll just read this one out. Again, these are things that I would typically get. That's what I'm doing here. So here's one. What's the dumbest thing a student ever said in your class? The dumbest thing that a student ever said in my class. Well, here's one. I don't know if it's the dumbest thing, but it was certainly kind of dumb in a particular sense. This was in a junior research class, small class that I had, as I mentioned last time, about 10 or 12 kids in the class. Last period of the day, class had already started. We're 2 or 3 minutes into the class, and a student walks in. So he's a little bit late, but I was kind of okay with that. So he comes in and he's beaming. He's got a big smile on his face, and and everybody's working at their computers and so forth. And he blurts out, "Hey everybody, I got lucky last night." Well, that gets everybody's attention. I say, "Well, do tell." Now I knew, I should say, that he didn't mean what everybody what we kind of thought. He might have meant, or certainly what that phrase typically means. His name was Adam. I said, Adam, so tell us, please, details. So he says, I was working on my research project last night, and I was just looking for sources, and I just kind of stumbled on to the greatest source ever. So I was really lucky that I found that source. I was like, oh, please. And they went back to work. Then I called Adam over and I explained to him what getting lucky means. And he just, oh no, that's not. Yeah, yeah, we know. So he got lucky last night, not in the, unfortunately for him, not in the traditional sense, but in the sense of finding a good source. All right. Next topic. This is the way we would do them. They would move fast. Next topic. What's the funniest thing that ever happened in this classroom? So this is at Jericho in room 266. The funniest thing that ever happened in room 266. I don't recall the year. It was a few years, and maybe it was 2005 or something along those lines. So I have an advanced placement U.S. history, American history class, and we're watching a film. And I'm kind of sitting back. The TV's up high. The kids are all watching the TV that's mounted up on the wall. And I notice a little mouse comes into the room from along the windows. That's where the heaters are. And the heater in room 266 would draw in fresh air, heat it, and then it would then, push it out into the room. So there was an opening outside somehow, and a little mouse came in. And I saw the mouse, and I'm saying, uh-oh. And he scurries around a little bit, and then he goes right back out. Okay. Nobody saw it except me, because they were all watching the TV. Next period, I have a research class, freshman research. So I have a full class, 28 kids, and they're all at the computers, as I said, that ring the room, three sides. There's the Windows side, and then the three other that doesn't have computers on it, and then there's three other sides, and they're all sitting around at the computers. So I'm sitting and I'm kind of watching, and then I notice the mouse comes back. And now what the mouse does is it goes from where it came in along the windows, and it heads to one of the side walls, and it just starts scurrying, along the side walls. Okay, where the kids are at their computers. All right, so nobody sees it. So, okay. The mouse then, as the mouse makes the turn to go along the long wall, one of the girls sees it, and I let them sit with their friends. So you had a group of girls, Asian girls, very quiet. I mean, you never heard a peep out of these girls. They see the mouse, and they start screaming. They jump up on their chairs, and there's the mouse scurrying along the wall, and everybody they're all screaming. I go over to the end of that wall, is where the classroom door is. I open up the classroom door. The mouse goes right out the door and makes a hard right, and I close the door and I say, "Okay, don't calm down. The mouse is gone. We don't have to worry about it because he's heading to the principal's office. So everything is okay." So that was kind of funny. That was kind of a funny scene, watching these kids go crazy. Now another topic. Next topic. I would get this a lot, just like this, hair. And when I would announce the topic, kids would some of the kids would get up. Oh, you shouldn't do. Oh, that's not nice. Thinking that I'm bald, so I must be angry. But I'm not. I don't. I've told the kids many times, hair is overrated. The aerodynamics alone make being bald worth it. But hair. So when I see this, I see a kid kind of screaming out at me. You're bald. So yeah, I know I'm bald. Okay, not a big deal. Uh, some some bald stories. It was we were having a current events discussion with I think it was an economics class, and a kid is making a report on what she read, and she makes a disparaging remark about either baldness in general or a person who was bald. I forget exactly what it was. And I stopped the kid and I said, "Hey, you know, oh," she says, "not you, Mr. Scarnati. You rock the bald head." Wasn't quite sure what that meant. So I turned to the kid next to me and I said, "Did she just take another shot at me?" And the girl said, "Oh, no, Mr. Scarnati. That's a compliment." So I said, "Oh, thank you. Thank you very much." So there you go. I rock the bald head. Uh, at August Martin, I still had a little bit of hair on the side, kind of like a George Costanza look. And I had gotten a haircut. And a little girl sitting in the front says, "Hey, Mr. Scarnati, did you get a haircut?" And I said, "Well, yes, I did." And she said, "What did you tell the barber?" "Take a little off the top." I didn't see that. I didn't see that coming. But I thought that was pretty funny. And then there would always be the kid who would ask, "Did you ever think about wearing a toupee?" And kids would grumble. Oh. And I would say, "Toupee? Here's what I think of a toupee. I don't like this thing. And here's what I'm doing with it." So, no, I never really considered wearing a toupee. All right, let's go to the next topic. And I would occasionally get a topic like this, and kids would all start booing. "Oh, no, no, no! We don't want to talk. We don't want to talk about that. We don't want to talk about that. No, 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 no." So okay, so we would table the discussion of that, or really any other serious topic that came up. Uh, then I would occasionally get something like this. What's the dumbest thing you meaning me? What's the dumbest thing you ever said in class? Well, so here, I don't have to. I didn't have to think about this because I had a student. I fairly is that Jericho, American History, Advanced Placement American History class. Her name was Netta, and one day in class, she's writing something, and the girl next to her sees it and starts laughing. So I said, "Netta, what what's so funny?" "Oh, nothing, nothing." I said, "Well, no, it's obviously something, and it's funny, and so I would like a laugh. What is it?" "Oh, no, 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 it's nothing, it's nothing." Oh, and then the other girl says, "Oh, tell him, tell him." She says, "Well, I kind of make note of things that you say that are kind of funny or dumb." So, oh, really? And so I said, "Let me see." And this is what I see. So she had a whole list, and let me just kind of point out that it wasn't just I just showed you one page. It was several pages that she had just sticking together. There was a whole lot of kind of dumb things that I had said over time. So I'll give you a couple samples of what Netta thought was kind of silly or dumb. Uh, I used to use a technique called do now. You know, you put do now up on the board so when kids come in, they get to work right away. So they sat at the tables, and apparently I would put assignments on their tables to get the class started. So she wrote as being very funny. On your table is a do now that I'd like you to do now. Now these are things that I've said. Now look at the do next now. Okay. Did I say that yesterday? It doesn't matter because you guys don't remember anyway. There's an old saying. No, I can't even remember the old saying. These are things I said in class that she wrote down. I didn't know whether I should scream or laugh. Pulling out my hair is no longer an option. If I was a high school junior, male, I wouldn't admit to watching Regis and Kelly. If something I'm saying you don't know, which I believe is probably everything I'm saying, you might want to take notes. And then finally, she notes, among many other things, she notes, so make a note of that. Don't steal a car in Louisiana. I don't know how that came up. We're probably talking about death penalty in Louisiana or whatever, but in any event. So those would be some examples of dumb things that I said according to Netta, and I forget what her last name was. Okay, next topic. Next topic is technology. Well, that's a good topic. Technology. So what I occasionally would tell students about how educational technology has evolved over time, and you would start with the big innovation when I was an elementary school student in the 1960s was the introduction of the Bic pen. Here's a Bic pen. I would then explain why that was such a big deal. And I would start with, before I started in school, you had students using fountain pens, which would draw their ink from an inkwell. Uh, and the old desks would have a hole in the upper right hand corner where you would put an ink bottle so that you could refill your fountain pen from the inkwell. Here's a photo of an old desk. So that hole in the upper right hand corner where you would put your inkwell is what kids would have to use. Now, every there are always there are always some who figure out a way to take the technology and use it for some other purpose. So the stories used to be that if you had a wise guy sitting behind a girl who had a long ponytail, that she ran the risk of having that ponytail dipped into the inkwell and then have ink in her hair or on the back of her blouse and so forth. So now, but that was before my time. The inkwell, uh, and to fill up those pens was not such an easy thing to do because you had to take the pen apart, you had to dip it into the well, you had to draw the ink. It's like drawing ink into a syringe. You had to fill it up, the pen, and then you'd be able to then write with the pen, and it was terrible. They would blot, and it was just awful. So when I started school, we didn't have the ink wells. We had ink cartridges that we could put into the fountain pen. and then it was just a matter of piercing the bottom of the cartridge to allow the ink to flow to the tip of the pen. Uh, and what we discovered is that if you got enough ink into the tip of the pen, you could flick it, and then it'd be ink would splatter. So we always had ink on our shirts because guys would do the flick with the pen. And then as I said, the big change was the Bic pen, the ballpoint pen. Ballpoint pens had been in existence for many, many decades, but they were something that was really reserved for the wealthy because they were expensive. The Bic pen became the everyman's pen. They were cheap, disposable. They were revolutionary in that sense. But we couldn't do this anymore. We couldn't do it. But what we learned is that take another look at the Bic pen. So what we learned is that you could pull the tip out of the pen, kind of jiggle it a little bit, get it loose, and then you could slide it out. The tip and the cartridge that had the ink in it, a very thin, like reed like straw that had the ink in it. You could pull that right out. Had a little plastic stopper on the top. You could pop that right off, and then what you had was the perfect spitball shooter. So that became the thing to do, was to use your big pen, make some spitballs, and shoot people anywhere you want. And we became pretty adept at at shooting spitballs through the through the pen. And from the introduction of the big pen forward, there wasn't a whole lot that changed. I mean, when I got we didn't have calculators even. You had adding machines that accountants would use, but nothing that we would use. I mean, they were still teaching us, or trying to teach us, how to use slide rules to do calculations, one step above, I guess, an abacus. So the introduction of computers became, wow, that was a big deal. And that started to happen in the late 1970s, the early 70s, I guess, but by the late 70s, they'd kind of taken hold. Not personal computers. These were big, what were called mainframe computers, the size of a room, these computers. And I remember when I was at the City University of New York Graduate Center, uh, taking a I forget which course it was that I was taking, but they took us down to the computing center, which was in the basement, and it was huge, where they had the mainframe computer. Uh, and he was telling us, you have data that you need to be analyzed. We were still using punch cards at that time to get your data onto punch cards. You could then bring them down to the computers, the computing center, and they would do what we used to call a data run. They would run your data for you, and then you would come back 2 or 3 days later, and you'd have a printout, stacks of paper with all your different analysis on it. Things that my students were doing, I was teaching my students how to do it at Jericho, using a desktop computer and a program called SPSS, the Statistical Package for the Social Sciences. And what took days to do when I was in grad school, they could do now in seconds, literally in seconds. So uh, I'm at this computing center, and I knew a little bit about computers, and I knew that they were used for data analysis, and the internet was something that was also this kind of mysterious thing. But I knew a little bit about it, and that it was used to connect one computer to another, and scientists could then share data in real time, that kind of thing. So he explains to us how the things are working and so forth. And I'll never forget this. A student raises her hand, young woman, and she says, "Could we just like type in a question like, what's the population of the world?" And the computer will give us an answer. And we all started snickering and laughing. That's not what computers do. You can't. And the professor was very nice. Oh no, no, computers don't do that. And we were all kind of laughing, not kind of snickering more than laughing at her. But nobody laughs at that question anymore, right? So be careful who you laugh at, because we were laughing at her like she was this idiot, didn't know anything about computing, when in fact she was the prescient one. She was the one with the great question. Well, if you can't do that, what good is all this technology? And so now, of course, we have Google and we can type in that question and get an answer instantly. So be careful who you're snickering at, who you're laughing at, because they might know a whole lot more than you do. Now, uh, they also showed us a modem. Here's a picture. So the modem was this external device, as you saw, and you took your telephone and you put your telephone into those two suction cups. You don't even, a lot of people probably never even seen this type of telephone. You'd put it in the two suction cups, and then you would dial a number. And the number you were dialing was another modem connected to another computer. And once it made the connection, you got that sound. Like if you ever made a phone call and you got a fax machine instead of another phone, you got that high squealed sound. That's what you would get, and that told you that you were now connected to the other computer, and you could send stuff to that computer. That computer could send stuff to you, and this is the way science was kind of progressing. People were sending data back and forth, and that's what the internet, the World Wide Web, was used for. Now, if I fast forward just a little bit to the early 1990s, when I was at the grad center, that was the early 1980s, 1982 to 1984, that range. In the early 1990s, I'm teaching a class at Townsend Harris High School that is a web-based course. This was amazing to me. This was one of the first, and the course was linking students, high school students, college students together, and they created this simulation. The simulation was that we would negotiate a treaty, an international treaty. The one that we were negotiating was a treaty about the use of the seas, and every group would be a different country, and every country would have its own profile, and then we were supposed to proceed with these negotiations, and the negotiations would take place online. So the person who was in charge of the computers at Townsend Harris, uh, remember his last name was Tiffin. I can't remember his first name, but in any event, so he came to me and he said that, okay, you're going to be doing this, so you'll be working with these computers that are tied to this internet. And I said, well, I would really like to be able to prepare myself at home. I did have a computer at the time, but I had no internet access. No problem. I can give you an external modem. So he gives me this little box that's was an external modem that I could connect to the computer. And I said to him, "Where do you put the phone?" Because it didn't have the suction cups on it. And he started laughing. He said, "No, no, no, Tony, we don't we don't need those anymore. But now you don't even need external modems anymore because obviously everything is all connected." So it was all very new. I guess is the roundabout point that I'm making. It was all very new at that time, and we were having some fun with it. And there was one kid in the class who really knew what he was doing in terms of the technology, how to log on, how to get connected, and so forth. So he was a big help. Fast forward a little bit more. By the time we get to the late 90s, most people have computers. Computers are connected to the internet. There are no external modems, etc., etc. And then along comes the next wave of technology: the cell phones, smart boards, things of things of that sort. Now, cell phones became a major problem in classrooms. I can tell you this: in the early 2000s, when cell phones became fairly ubiquitous among students, cell phones in the classroom became a major problem, and they remained a major problem for a number of years until we kind of got the handle on how to take care of this. So kids would be on their phone. They'd be put the phone away. I'm gonna confiscate the phone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It became a major pain in the neck. So I incorporated into my class rules limits on cell phone use in the classroom. But you always had the problem with kids who would have their cell phone in their lap, and they would be, they'd be on their phone like this. So when I was going over my course requirements, and this was in high school as well as the college classes I was teaching, I would tell kids, look, no cell phones during class. Don't try to hide your cell phone while you're using it. So, don't make the big wall on your desk with your backpack and other books and so forth, and then be hiding behind it on your cell phone. I know about that, and don't do that. And then I would say, and another thing, whenever I see a student like the one in the picture with your hands in your lap and you're manipulating something and you're smiling, it can only mean one of two things, neither of which are acceptable in my classroom. And I would say that, and then kids would start to get it, and the laughter would make its way around the class when the kids realize I'm making this joke about what you might be doing in your lap. So that was so that was technology, and that was my side point. That was one of the jokes I would tell that kids wouldn't get right away, but as they got it, they thought it was pretty funny, and they would start to laugh. Another joke like that I would make that kids wouldn't get right away, but eventually they would. They would start to laugh. Well, if a kid came into class like this, right? So the kid has a broken finger, and I would always say the same thing to the kid. What happened? Somebody punch you in the nose? And no, he would say, no, no, no. And then the other kids would start to get it. How could you get a broken nose? How could you get a broken finger if you got punched in the nose? Well, your finger would have to be. So it, that was my humor, and sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't. So that was technology in the classroom. Next topic would often get this. Another one of those pressing issues: Cheetos or cheese doodles. And they would go back, oh, no, no, cheese doodles. No, no, it's Cheetos. How could you like cheese doodles better than Cheetos? How could you like Cheetos better than cheese doodles? And on and on and on they would go. I don't particularly have a preference, Cheetos or cheese doodles. But in any event, the kids were very passionate about it. And then this next one, this is an actual one. Not that I saved the slip of paper, but this is what a kid wrote on the slip of paper. Uh, and I read it out loud. What do teachers do with their free time? And then I looked down at it again. I said, "Oh, wait a minute. That's not what the student wrote." And I showed the slip to the student who was sitting next to me and told her to read it out loud, because it was not what do teachers do with their free time. It was, what do teachers do with their free lime? He didn't cross the T. What do teachers do with their free lime? So I said, well, I want to dispel this myth right now. Teachers do not get free lime. What do you think? I'm telling this to the class. What do you think? We go to the local supermarket, go to the produce aisle, fill up a produce bag with limes, go to the checkout and show the cashier our ID as a teacher, and the cashier says, "Oh, Mrs. Scarnati, no charge for those limes. Those limes are free because you're a teacher." I said, "That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. We have to pay for our limes just like everybody else." Everybody's laughing. This is very, very funny. The next day, this was an economics class. Side point, economics classes, lots of boys in them. My sociology classes were mostly girls. So you see why I was not an economics major in college. I was a sociology major in college. But I digress. The next day, two boys come in. These are seniors, right? So two senior boys come in, and they're carrying like a shopping bag, and they come over to me. They open up the bag. What's inside the bag is a produce bag filled with limes, and they said, "Mr. Scarnati, these are for you, because if ever there was a teacher who deserved free limes, it's you. Enjoy." And they give me this big bag, this big produce bag filled with limes. It was just a very, very funny thing. Uh, and then finally, uh, next topic, advice for future teachers. Oh, I could give some advice to future teachers. Uh, I would say that the most important thing for you to do if you're a teacher, well, not the most important thing, but one of the important things to do, make your classes interesting, make them fun if you can. Not all topics lend themselves to fun, like abortion. But find humor wherever you can. Make the things that are just kind of ordinary things, make them interesting, fun, memorable. Kids will enjoy it. So one of the kind of ordinary run of the mill things that we have to do as teachers at the end of a semester or at the end of the year is to collect the textbooks back. So at the beginning of the semester, in my sociology classes, I would distribute the textbooks. The kids would get, and I didn't keep one as an example, but the kids would get a card. Some people call them book cards, other people call them book receipts. I always call them book receipts. And the book receipt had two sides to it, and the kid had to put their name, their address, their phone number, the title of the book, the name of the course, my name, the condition of was the book new, was it worn, was it in good condition, and then they would have to put the penalty, which would be a dollar amount, how much it would cost to replace the textbook, and then they would have to put the book number on the card. So every textbook, we would put a number in the book so we can keep track of the books. So at the end of the semester, I would tell my sociology students the day after the final exam. The final exam I would give with maybe 4 days left in the semester, and then I would say on the day after that, I want you to bring in your textbooks. I'm going to collect your textbooks because now the final exam is done. And I'm also going to collect your notebooks, and then I'm going to give you a grade on your notebooks. And I would, need a couple of days in order to be able to do that. So the final exam is done. The next day comes. I have the book receipts, the stack of them. They were green book receipts at Jericho that I had. And I would say to the kids, okay, here's how we're going to collect the books. I'm going to call your name, and you're going to tell me. Oh, I also, by the way, gave them a 5-point bonus if they brought their textbooks in on that day. So they would get 5 points added to their final exam score. On their terms of their report card, it meant maybe a point or two. No big deal. You get a 5 point bonus. So all the kids would bring their books in. 98% of them would bring their books in on that day. So I said, when I call your name, I want you to tell me the number on your textbook. And if the number on your textbook matches the number on the card, you're going to get your 5 point bonus. If the number on your textbook does not match the number on the card, then you have a stolen textbook. And I have to report you immediately to the authorities. And no 5 point bonus for you. We're like, oh, okay. So, and then I would say, so you would then get up with your textbook and your notebook, very stern, and you're going to walk counterclockwise around the room. And I had a storage closet. And you're going to take your textbook and you're going to put it in the storage closet and you're going to stack it up neatly where you see the other books. You're going to stack it up neatly. And if the stack is full, you're going to start a new stack. Okay, then you're going to take your notebook and you're going to come over here on this table and you're going to put your notebook. But you're not just going to drop your notebook on the table. If you have a binder, you're going to put your binder with the other binders. If you have a spiral notebook, you'll put your spiral notebook with the other spiral notebooks. If you have a composition book, you'll put that with the other composition books. And I would tell them, if it's a binder, you make sure that your binder goes the opposite way of the binder you're putting it on, so it stacks up level. Otherwise, we'll have a stack and they'll fall off. Same thing is true with the spiral notebooks. Put the spiral edge opposite of the notebook, so I get nice, neat stacks. They were like, "This guy is nuts." Okay, it's the end of the semester, so that they knew me by then. So I would call out the first kid, and she would tell me the number on the book, and I would say, "Correct." Get up, and then she would progress, and then as she came out, I would tell them, then you continue in the same counterclockwise direction, and you return to your seat. The next kid will already be called. That next kid will be coming up. So we're going to have an orderly procession around the classroom. And it was pretty fun. But one kid kind of blurts out. I forget who the kid was, what the year was. Kid blurts out, says, "This is better than what graduation is going to be like." And I would tell the kids, when you get I'll give you back your book receipt, and I would say you could do one of two things. You could tear it up and throw it in the trash. This way, there's never going to be an issue that you didn't return your book. Or you could keep the book card because I've signed each of them. You can keep them as a memento of the class. So they would laugh about that. And some kids would actually keep the book cards. Most of them would throw them out. So this kid says, this is better than graduation. Getting the book receipt back from you, Mr. Scarnati, is better than getting a diploma. So he says, I want you to, when you get your book receipt from Mrs. Scarnati, I want you to stop and I'll take a picture. I'll take a picture of you. And then you could have that picture. So they start laughing. And so they start doing it. They're coming around. And the kid is handing him the book card, and the guy's taking a picture of it. And then he says, "Well, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry." He didn't say anything. All of a sudden, he starts to play pomp and circumstance. So now we have this procession going around the room. It looks something like this. So, who is having more fun, the kids or me? Because I was really, really enjoying that. And they gave me, what I used to make the video. They gave me a collage of the pictures that were taken, and they put at the bottom. This is a sociology class, and when we talked about the family was one of our topics. And the first thing we did was to define family. And I told them that, people throw around the word family a lot, and that's not what we really mean in sociology. Families are, we would define it, and it wouldn't be like a group of friends or something. People throw that term around a lot. Like, for example, I would say that in a faculty meeting, whenever the principal would say, we're like a family here, I knew what was coming next. The principal was going to ask us to do something for no pay because we're like a family here. So they wrote at the bottom of this collage, they said, "You may not call us a family, but we will forever call you ours." And that's sweet. These are high school seniors. So I'll kind of end on that note. They graduated, we graduated. It's an end, but it's also a new beginning. So this is the last episode, I guess you would call it, of my high school memories. As I said last week, I'm going to be going on hiatus for I don't know how long, couple weeks, couple of months. I don't know. In the interim, if you have ideas for what you would like to see me do at some time in the future, other than just go away, leave us alone, feel free to send them to me. You can message me on Facebook, or you could just add it to the most recent Facebook post. So take care of yourselves. I hope you enjoyed uh, the series. I guess I guess you would say. Uh, so take care. So long.
That's all, folks.